Welcome to the Spiritual View. We are continuing on with talking about the ego today. And what we're going to focus on is what is the ego and how to identify it within yourself. I've been doing some personal research on the topic for a while, and I found that there's a lot of different explanations and opinions of what ego is, but underlying all of it, it's kind of the same. So I think we're each going to share our bit about what we feel the ego is and what we've learned to be, what it is and within ourselves, and how we discern between our ego and intuition a little bit too.
So animals are a really great way of learning how to they don't really have an ego. I feel like they're always in the moment. They're going to react to whatever is present there. They're not thinking about the past or the future or like trying to plan something. They're just in the moment. And I think for us, ego is basically what separates us from source. So how this became really apparent for me personally is, I've always thought, okay, well, people ask when you're little, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And you feel like you have to have this answer. Well, that's a little bit of an ego because you just are who you are at the moment.
That's identifying with your job.
Yeah, totally.
What do you want to be?
Yeah, you don't have to identify with that. And that is not who you are. We are so much more than that. And so just letting that go and saying, I am just who I am, and I'm not defined by my profession. I'm kind of letting that go of that part of ego that says, okay, you have to be a doctor, or you have to be a lawyer, or whatever other people expect you to be.
I like what you said before when we were discussing before we started recording, is that the ego creates a separateness. And when you create a boundary, like I'm a doctor, that makes you separate than others too. It's like a defining thing. So it's like, it just perpetuates that separateness.
Labels are great for understanding, but it doesn't mean you have to live those labels. You can just...
It also creates like a stereotype of what like a doctor is. Well, what is a doctor? It's like if you really question it, it's an assumption of ideas, of thoughts that we have about what a doctor is. But nowadays, like doctors are doing different things, and so it's like.
Right. Should you talk to a doctor differently when you talk to, like, say, the person who comes and collects your trash?
We do talk to them differently usually.
I try not to, but I'm just saying that, like, those are those boundaries that we kind of create and make us separate. I'm not identifying the other person as just a spiritual being who is here, walking their path.
Yeah, it's good for information, but you don't want to stop there. Like, you want to dig a little bit deeper, right?
So, that's my lately I've been thinking more about, like, the ego and how it plays into my life and how I can, like, shut off that little voice that keeps saying, you have to be this, or you have to be that, or you have to do this.
That's constantly being thrown at us.
Mm-hmm.
Externally and internally,
Yeah.
right? Like the voices in our head, but also people outside of us affirming what our internal expectations are of ourselves.
Right.
Well, so for me, when I think of ego, I think of it as kind of a distraction. Because when I'm doing a lot of intuitive work, it's really easy to get stuck up inside your head and, oh, I should have done this better, and oh, I should be doing it this way, and oh, are they thinking I'm crazy, and oh, like, did I get that right? There's a whole lot of that going on. And so to me, it's a distraction. It's like that little voice that just isn't shut up, And I don't really, I've learned that the best way to deal with a situation like that is the more that you try to ignore it, I feel like it just gets louder, right? So I feel like the best way to deal with it for me is to just be like, okay, I know that's ego right now. Okay, yeah, I'm feeling these things, but I choose not to feel them right now in this moment. Like I'm choosing to do something else and to focus on something else, to acknowledge it and then just to kind of keep it moving. But I also feel that ego is important to live our lives. I feel like without ego, it's also important to become more conscious of it too, to be more aware and discern what is ego and what is not. But once you've done that, I think ego is really important to live your lives, because it helps you really be in the experience and then just grow as a human being as well, like in your human experience, to just be the best version of yourself. Because if you're aware, then you're aware of all these things, but you're also aware to be better than that as well. And so it helps you kind of just grow. I feel like it creates a lot of growth. Gives you the opportunity to create a lot of growth in your life. So
It's the mud at which the lotus emerges.
yeah, that little
But I love what you said. A saying that is really common about the ego is what you resist persists. So like, there's no conquering the ego, there's no reigning the ego, but there are ways of working with the ego. It's kind of like, is it the Buddhist paintings where they have like the little man with the bowl and he's trying to like conquer the bull? I feel like those little paintings are actually representative of us as humans and the ego. And it's this big, powerful energy within us that can actually work with us, but it's a matter of acknowledging it and being conscious of it and aware of it, like Christina was saying. And
then stepping out of the way so you don't get bored.
yeah, or I think the final image is him writing it like peacefully. So like using that power in alignment with your true self, which like a lot of people talk about the true self or the higher self, or your intuitive self. It's basically the part of you that is aware. So like Eckhart Tolle is an author of The Power of Now and also A New Earth, which was recommended by Linda, which was one of our speakers a couple of times ago. And what he talks about is that it's who we really are is actually the awareness behind our thoughts, and that we're not our thoughts. And when we identify with our thoughts, that's ego. Ego is anything that we identify as who we are, as our worthiness, as our competency, or our lovability, and that may be job title, that may be power, that may be status. Those are things that we really value in our society, right? Status, how much we get paid, what kind of car we drive, what kind of house we have. When we put our focus into that as defining who we are, and not just simply as something that we enjoy and have pleasure with, that can really bring people into the ego, because those things are fleeting, they're temporary, they're impermanent, but our state of being, who we are, is what he says is eternal, which I believe that our soul goes on and on and on. And when we create that separateness from source, which is believing that we are temporary, that we don't continue after this life, that we aren't a part of source, we aren't of eternal power, that we lose that foresight of knowing that we have this ability to be something bigger than what we own or what we do or what we think even.
So it's kind of like the division between the material and the spiritual, and recognizing that, yes, we are our bodies, we're in this physical world, but we are spiritual beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's that saying? I'm just a spiritual, what is it?
Spirit, right?
A human having a spirit having a human experience.
Something, yeah. A soul
having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so ways to identify the ego within you. Pretty much anything that's fear-based,
Mm-hmm.
right? Any thoughts or feelings that come out
negative.
that are self-doubting, self-depleting, or depleting of others. Anything that encourages separateness. So
And low vibration. Like anything that just makes you feel like you have like a low vibration.
you're less than, yeah. And Eckhart Tolle even explains it to this level, which is kind of extreme, as us identifying as a Bulls fan versus what's another basketball team? I don't know.
Lakers.
Huh?
Lakers
team, right? Like
Warriors, come on.
Okay. I'm gonna piss off a lot of people. Identifying as I am a Warriors fan. It's like you're a Bulls fan, you're a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Is that even basketball? I don't know. I'm not a sports fan, obviously. But even to the extent of us identifying with a team,
Or
can
even
give
a
us a
country.
feeling, a feeling of superiority that, oh, we have it better than you, or we're smarter than you because I do this. That's very much ego he talks about. Anything that just amplifies the separateness. And as far as intuitive development goes, identifying ego, which we can each share our bits on that, discerning between ego and intuition. For me, it's easy because I've practiced meditating. This is why meditation is so important with intuitive development or being mindful and conscious, is when you meditate, you empty yourself of thoughts and of the ego. Ideally, you're just kind of still and you're in that inner awareness, which is what Eckhart Tolle talks as your inner being. And when you're in that inner being and your power, you can really discern what comes in, what's penetrating your energetic field, what thoughts are coming in. Because whatever's coming in isn't going to be yours if you're good at clearing your mind. So that's why meditation's so essential. You know how to clear your mind and you can identify when things are coming in that aren't you. But if you're developing, you're clearly not going to know whether you can trust 100% or not because you're developing. You don't know. You don't know yet. And so when you get something, you may hold on to it and not say it because you don't know, is this me or is this intuition? That's why really practicing clearing thought and being in that inner stillness can really help to discern. And that's how I've learned how to discern. It's the only way that I feel like is most appropriate of discerning.
And if you can't completely clear too, because meditation can be very difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, there's different ways that you can learn to meditate too, but just like we said before, like just being aware that thought in that moment is just a thought,
Being
and it's just a
mindful.
moment.
Yeah.
Just being mindful of your being present in the situation and just acknowledging and letting it pass. So even if you can't be completely still in your mind, I feel like being completely still in your mind is not really being, I don't know. I'm not gonna say it.
Is this
It's
ego
not-
talking?
No, it feels like, for me anyway, I feel like when I'm still in my mind, I don't feel present. I don't feel in my body. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know.
Well, there's
Being in your
being way up
mind.
here.
Right. So like when you're meditating,
Mhm.
So you just want to, I don't know, acknowledgement I think is the best way to meditate, because I don't feel like being completely
Being still in your mind, I literally feel like I move up. This is what they call the higher self.
right.
It's
So
like
you're
up here.
so you're not really in your mind anymore though. You're not really in your body anymore. You've moved outside of that. Right?
So if there are thoughts happening, you're witnessing it,
right.
and you're able to know
Right.
more mindfully what is coming through as thought that's yours.
Yeah.
So I understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. I don't know how to articulate it well, so
Yeah.
I'm glad you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wait, how do I say
It's
this?
very much like I almost feel like my energetic body shifts back and up outside of me. Is that, do you experience that?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more along the lines of like, when you're out in nature, because we are so overstimulated with gadgets and things and, things beeping and everything calls our attention nowadays. But when you're in that stillness of just being in complete nature, you're kind of there where you're just like in the moment, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you're just in that stillness and you're aware of who you are and what is around you, and you're not really thinking about all the other stuff.
Yeah. I feel really, like, when I'm in nature, I feel that connectedness.
Yes.
Where it's like, I merge with everything around me. That's what it
It's
reminds me of.
easier to
Yeah.
connect,
Yes.
definitely, when you're in nature.
And that's like the opposite of ego. Ego is
Right.
that separateness. So
Mhm.
I feel like that connectedness of feeling like, okay, I'm a part of nature is how
That's,
we
I
get
feel like
out
that's
of
why
ego.
grounding is so important with intuitive development. Because you're connecting with
Nature.
nature,
Mhm.
which is, always present. It doesn't have thought.
You can also do this in, a bathtub too, I'm sure. Just soaking,
Sure.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you guys discern between ego and intuition?
Ego will usually bring up feelings, really strong emotional charges, where you're kind of like either anxious, scared, or feeling like you need to do something, whereas, not your higher self will just be. Like, it can give you advice that everything's okay.
I like how you said that, because one of the things I had a hard time discerning in the beginning was when I would get images of like catastrophes, like earthquake or like something really bad in the world was going to happen, and I would feel fear about it. I was like, that doesn't quite feel like intuition, because I feel like it's hard because I'm empathic, so I will feel the feelings of the people that are affected by something, and so I do get the emotion sometimes with intuition, and that's where it gets really hard to discern. But the knowing about what's going to happen is usually neutral.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, whereas it comes in as a knowing, it's just like neutral knowing. There's
Yeah,
no opinion.
and it could be
There's
something.
no opinion.
Yeah, it could be something that's gonna happen, and it's not really that great, but it comes really clear.
Yeah. What for you?
Like I said before, distraction. Like anything that distracts me that's not from my highest good in that moment. Like when I'm trying to do something and I'm having all these thoughts and running anxiety and all these things, anything that makes me hesitate, from my goal or from my intention or from that moment is what makes me feel like that's just my ego getting
What
in
do
the
you
way.
do when that starts to happen?
Same, I had such bad anxiety as a kid, and I still have anxiety pretty bad, but I've learned how to cope with it and not really control it, because you can't really control that kind of stuff. I think it's about just being aware and being, acknowledging it and just breathing in that moment and just like,
Yeah,
okay, wait a
that's
second,
huge.
That's
like
grounding.
breathe
Yeah.
breathe it in, breathe everything out, and then be like, okay, everything's fine.
And
That's
it's like diverting focus.
I gotta refocus my intention in that moment, and I breathe it all out, and then I'm just like, okay, that happened. Now I'm gonna do this. And acknowledgement for me is huge, because I used to just have like anticipatory anxiety, and I just get these running pictures in my head, and it would just go over and over and over and over again, and it's like, okay, I can't stop it. It's just like a one-track thing.
Yeah.
But I can say, I recognize this, and I see this, I'm aware of this,
I can let it
and now I
go.
want to do this, and I'm going to let this go.
Yeah.
So refocusing and just being aware and breathing. And
Breathing's really good.
it's huge.
It puts you
Yeah.
really in the moment because you are focusing on something you are physically
Not
doing.
just breathing,
that
but focusing on your breath, right?
Yes,
Like you
because
said.
we usually breathe and we don't think about it.
Right.
It just happens. But when you focus on it, you are there with your
Right.
body.
So another, I don't think this is Eckhart Tolle, this is someone else, I can't remember who. Another piece of information that I learned, do we have time?
I think we have 5 minutes.
Okay, is that we have the power of the universe within us. That sounds crazy, but we have this invisible force running our body. All of these automatic processes, our heart's beating all the time, our whole lives, which is amazing. Our breath is constantly flowing without us having to be conscious of it. We're not controlling it. We're not thinking, oh, did I breathe last second? You're just breathing. You just are. And that's the natural state of the energy that permeates everything. That's the source. And that's what we can tap into within us and actually use that energy within us to bring our focus onto things, to manifest things, whatever. And so when we are separate from that, which is what ego does, we don't have that power behind us. But when we get to be aware of those thoughts and emotional charges, which are just past conditioning from past events that are, and you don't have to be within the feeling of that past event in the present moment. And when you become aware, you can step outside of that past feeling and event that's just conditioned within you.
Well said. Yes. So essentially, some tips that are easy to remember from this video is to breathe, being aware, shifting your focus and your awareness, and then acknowledging the thoughts and the fears and the anxiety that pop up throughout your life and when you're experiencing something. and
Being
then
mindful.
being mindful, and then refocusing.
So yeah, like what you
Right.
said earlier, once you are able to call it out, you have a choice,
Right.
and you can make that choice and pick some other road that you want to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I kind of visually see it as like when you're standing in line at Disneyland and you're like halfway through the line to go on one ride and you decide you don't want to go on it anymore. Making that conscious choice that you can jump lines. You don't have to fully keep going down that line just because you're already on the path and that trajectory to do it, because your body and mind are having that reaction. So you can actually like jump that line from that Disneyland ride. And actually, when you step out of the ego, you get like the first pass access to whatever ride you want. I'm sorry.
that was a little more complicated than it needed to be, but I understand your point.
Okay. Spirit was showing me that. So I'm sharing my little vision with you. Sometimes metaphors help people to conceptually understand things.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, because this is kind of really deep, complex stuff that we're simplifying in words, and each word has whole explanations on it. And that's probably why we'll do another video on the ego, on some aspect of ego. There's so many topics to go into it, but we'll probably continue with a video too with ego.
Sounds
Yeah. But for now, I think we are done with ego today.
good. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.